Very much for coming to this session on publishing student journals. I'm John Maple from Oklahoma Christian University in Oklahoma City. My co-panelists are Jake Blosser here on my left from Texas Women's, and the famous, or perhaps infamous, Gordon Bakken from Cal State Fullerton. And we are going to share with you today what we do to publish a student journal. I'm going to go first. I represent a small university. Texas Women's is considerably larger, and Cal State Fullerton considerably larger still. And so we have different resources, different programs, and so we hope that in covering the small, the medium, and the large, you will get a good feel for how to go about publishing a student journal. Whether your chapter has a journal now or you're looking for ways to improve, we'll share and try to tell you what we do that works, and then at the end we'll open it up for some Q&A. I have been the faculty advisor at Oklahoma Christian since 1984. My students accuse me of remembering history instead of having to study it. We have been publishing a journal for 19 years. This is the latest edition. If you'd like to look at these, I do need these back. Okay, and I'll tell you why as we go along. But if you'd like to just have a look. This is a small journal, the Oklahoma Christian Journal of Historical Studies. OC has about 1,900 undergrads. We have around 50 history and social studies education majors. Our chapter averages around 12 to 15 members. We're all undergraduates. We don't have any graduate programs in the history area at all. That's what we have in terms of resources. This is our, we've been published 19 volumes so far. We've had one tie for first in the Nash Journal Award competition. We've had 3 ties for third. We have placed third in the Nash competition the last 2 years. And of course that's in the category of not having any graduate students, no graduate programs. What I tried to do as faculty advisor working with the students on producing a journal is to maximize our quite limited resources. And so I'm going to go through how do we get content, working with the editor, something of the timeline that we work on, and then printing and financing all of this. And hopefully give you some ideas when you are a small department at a small university, how can you produce a quality journal. The obvious way to get content is pretty simple. You ask the students, the members of Phi Alpha Theta, of the chapter, who have produced A papers, to submit those papers, those book reviews from their classes. An A paper is usually in the range of what we're looking for, not always. Sometimes it's what may get a skin of the teeth A, A minus minus, may not be quite good enough to go into the journal. But we encourage members to submit papers. The 3 faculty in the department serve as a review committee. We look at these papers, not, again, grading them for our classes, but looking at them with the eye of is this good enough to go into the journal? We very often have revisions to suggest, and so we work with the students in terms of sharpening the thesis, dealing with interpretations, perhaps looking at a work that they overlooked the first time around, that sort of thing. We serve as a review committee. Now, we also, though, in addition to asking Phi Alpha Theta members to submit, we're on the lookout for papers that come from other places. And in particular for us, we have a strong honors program, and all honors students in their freshman year take a 2-semester sequence called Western Thought and Expression 1 and 2, to the Renaissance and since the Renaissance. And they write papers in those classes, and the very best of those papers are well suited for the journal. They have to do some revisions typically, but since I teach both of those classes, the Western Thought classes, I am in a good position to know exactly whose papers are candidates for the journal. And of course, these freshmen are honored to be asked to submit to the journal, and they're delighted to do so, and they are very sharp young people. And so we, in accordance with the guidelines and the Nash Journal competition, seeking variety, seeking lower division, upper division in our case. In other cases it would be undergraduate, graduate, for a variety of papers. This is where we actually get usually 2 freshman papers as part of our journal each year from the honors program. So if you've got an honors program, that's a good place to look outside of the history classes themselves. In these that are circulating around, these copies that are circulating around, volume 19, there are 7 papers and 1 review, and that's a pretty typical number for us. That's about what we can muster with the number of students we have, drawing from the previous year's classes, the spring classes and the fall classes, typically that we're drawing from. We do have a senior member of the chapter, occasionally a junior, who's an excellent writer, serve as our editor. We don't have anything like a historical editing class or anything like that. So I'm simply on the lookout for a good writer, someone who writes well. Our editor for 2 years in a row actually served in the English department's writing lab, writing center, and so did a good job. The editor will focus for us on editing the papers for clarity of the prose, as opposed to interpretation. We faculty will work with the students in terms of getting the argument right, I guess you could say, for the interpretation, for considering the argument and so on. And the student editor tends to focus more on the presentation in the journal and the clarity of the prose. There can be some dialogue. Even if we have accepted a paper, occasionally the editor will say, I don't think this paper is really well written enough to be in the journal. And so we'll go back and forth on that and debate it. I try to give the editor some leeway to make some real decisions as they put the journal together. We solicit papers starting in January. I try to have an editor in place by the end of January, 1st of February. We work with the students in terms of revisions during the course of the spring term. But the reality is that the work, much of the work of putting the journal together, formatting, layout, production goes on in May and June. Our term ends by about the 1st of May. Our spring term is over by about the 1st of May. And so what I look for from the editor is commitment to be willing to work in May and June. I find it very difficult. Our students being very involved in a number of things typically, I find it very difficult to get a lot done during the spring term. They've got their current classes, their exams, their papers, and so on. A lot more happens in May and June to really bring things together. And so if you may be able to get things done in January, February, March, April, and publish well before the deadline, the July 1st deadline. For us, I find it difficult, and I am upfront with the editor and with the students about how, okay, once we are past final exams in late April, 1st of May, that's when we're really going to have to hit it if we're going to meet that deadline. And it works out. In terms of the financing and the printing, the actual production, physical production here, about 3 or 4 years ago, I came up with an idea to upgrade, how to upgrade, to try to imitate the Wellemethan, which is, has long been, shall we say, the flagship of student journals. This is much like what we, if I may do this, Jake, this is much what we used to do. We produced a small journal. It would have this type of binding, or perhaps a strip here on this side. It's what Kinko's can do. Most of us familiar with Kinko's. And what I wanted to do is to create a journal that maybe certainly wouldn't be this big, but this is called a perfect binding. This is a perfect binding. It's what your program for the conference here is a perfect binding. This is perfect binding. The copies of our journal that are going around, it's a perfect binding. Obviously, it looks good. It's a professional looking journal. It's what the journals that you receive, the Historian or any other journal that you may be receiving, looks like. Now, it's a lot more expensive. So what did I do? I came up with the idea of approaching our admissions department, our recruiting department, and saying, would you come up with some money, would you give me some money for producing a journal, and then we will use this as a recruiting tool. Any students interested in applying it to the History and Political Science department, we will show them this journal. If we have enough copies, we will give them a copy. Prospective seniors who are visiting campus, we'll give them a copy of this journal if you'll help us boost the number of copies and make it so that it's a perfect binding, and it will have it will really look good. And they said yes. Voila! I've doubled my money. So I go to the Vice President of Academic Affairs and basically say the same thing, that I'll use this as a recruiting tool if you'll give me money and I can publish, and you can show it to the Board of Trustees. And she goes, yes. So I triple my money. And so from going from a budget of about $200 that I scrounged from departmental funds to produce the journal, I suddenly have over $600, and I can produce 80 copies of the journal that's circulating around here. If one of those is around, I might
yeah,
bring
they all
them.
they
are. If we could have those come on back up, since they're taping this, maybe someone watching on the tape, 40 years from now, when they're just, still valuing this tremendous session, to produce 80 copies of this volume of the journal cost me $625. Okay, and about 200 of that comes from the department, another 200 and so from admissions, and another 200 and so from the Vice President of Academic Affairs. So again, in comparison to what science departments, engineering departments, business departments ask for, I'm asking for peanuts. But it's enough to upgrade and produce a journal, and so the Board of Trustees gets to see what we're doing, and we make points, we make PR points with the Board of Trustees. Prospective students see what we're doing, and we can say to them, you too can be published. You come here to Oklahoma Christian, and you'll have the opportunity to be part of the Phi Alpha Theta chapter, and you will have the opportunity to be published in the journal if you can produce work that is good enough. I'm not misleading as I talk to prospective students. You have to be a member of Phi Alpha Theta, and you have to produce work that's good enough. One other thing that I've been able to tap into, because I'm using this as a PR instrument for the university, is that we can also tap into the marketing departments, the marketing people's design. There are several designers and so on, and so the students still produce the journal. The students do all the work, but we can go to our marketing people and get advice. They can get design. We're not designers, and so they can provide tips for us about how to do things to make the journal look attractive. Branding, all the marketing things that I am no good at, and I'm not in business, I'm not in marketing, but making sure we have all the signature brands and so on, and produce a good-looking journal. At least I think it's good-looking. Well, let me wrap up. We go to the printer for our first run, our first copy, our approved copy, about June 20th. They can do a couple of day turnaround. The editor and I go over it one last time, looking for those final errors that are always, the final typos, the final problems that always seem to crop up somehow, no matter how many times you've read your copies. So we get those around June 23 or 4. We do a read through, one or 2 day turnaround. Our final press run then happens around June 28th or something like that, and then we put them into the mail to meet the deadline for the Nash Journal. So that in a nutshell is how we do it on a shoestring budget, how we do it in a small department with limited resources. I do hope my technical expertise is extremely limited. I hope, though, to explore the idea of e-publishing as well as paper copies, and to see what's available there. Again, I'm going to tap into the resources of the university and let them carry the cost. And so that's how I operate and publish a journal that we're proud of at Oklahoma Christian University. Jake, you're next for the medium-sized university.
Good morning. Before I begin, I should probably share a brief story with you. I'm a bit intimidated by the camera in the back. And part of that is because, it's been a couple of years now, but I was asked to go into a small room and record a lecture. And they wanted to put it on the web or something. And so I went in with my lecture, and they had me sitting down at a table. I don't usually sit down at a lecture, but sat down, and I gave this, what I thought was a very stimulating lecture, and when I was finished, I realized that the cameraman had fallen asleep. I had to actually get up and wake the poor man up and say, I'm done, and it was very traumatic. But anyway, I'm delighted to be here. I represent a medium-sized school, but perhaps more importantly, I think for the purposes of our discussion, I represent a new journal. We're new to this. We're in just finished our 4th year. The journal that Dr. Mabel just talked about has been publishing for 19 years, so well of Ethan, my goodness.
Under my leadership, 37 years, and it was published 3 times prior, but intermittently. So we've been at this for over 40 years.
I was going to say the latter years of the Eisenhower administration, so I wasn't too far off.
Well, that's actually when I arrived at the
So anyway. So we're just beginning our year of publication at a medium-sized state university. We've got a student population of about 14,000 students. The Department of History and Government has roughly 85 thereabouts history majors. The department also has a very small terminal master's program. Our Phi Alpha Theta chapter at ANU inducts approximately 30 members a year. So I can best attest to the success of a new journal in an environment where there's a critical mass of about 25 to 30 people who are actively invested in the journal's success. We don't have staff. We don't have we produce a Kinko's product. But we do actively, I think, equip students, as the others do, with professional skills in writing and publishing. I'm here, I think, most importantly, to encourage faculty, advisors, and students who do not have journals to start them at your colleges or universities. Before my university launched IBID in 2007, I had very serious doubts about such a project. Student journals, I'd always believed, were expensive and time-consuming. Students might not submit their work to the journal, or even worse, student editors might abandon the project and leave the poor advisor, i.e. me, awash in partially edited essays. I'm here to attest that, as of today, none of my fears have materialized. This morning, drawing on my brief experience with IBID, I want to discuss a trio of common concerns surrounding the establishment of student journals. So, beginning, what concerns people might have if you don't have the journal yet. Student interest, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about cost, and I want to talk about organization. That being said, I want to also add that the Biennial National Convention seems to me to be an ideal venue to encourage interested faculty and students to establish Phi Alpha Theta sponsored journals. Following the convention, student presenters will return to their campus with conference papers, panelist comments, and new ideas. Building on their experiences here, students can easily revise their national convention papers for spring submission to a student journal. So this is a great time to start thinking about journals. Indeed, we established IBID in November 2007 with an eye toward encouraging TW attendees at the 2008 National Convention in Albuquerque to submit their conference papers. What we have discovered, and I think this is really interesting, is that the prospect of publishing their papers in our journal has caused students to embrace increased regional and national conference opportunities. In the 5 years since our journal began, 40 students have presented papers at regional and national Phi Alpha Theta meetings, and some of these papers, not all of them, but some of them have been featured in IBID. To facilitate our students' involvement in conferences and possible student journal publication, our chapter hosts how-to sessions on how to write for a journal, how to write conference papers, these types of things. I think what's interesting is, in a way that I did not foresee, students have uncovered that continuum of professional development, conference presentation, essay revision, possible peer review, journal publication. So I think what I would say, if you're interested in increasing your chapter's involvement in regional or national conferences, a way to do that is to start a journal. My fear that students would be uninterested in submitting manuscripts for publication has proven unfounded. Each year, IBID receives numerous submissions for publication, and thanks to our excellent website, which is http://ibidjournal.wordpress.com, which I should have on a sign. The journal regularly receives publication inquiries from students at universities across the country. Now, to date, the journal has elected to accept submissions only from current or past students at Texas Women's University. That's an ongoing conversation about when or if we should open it up. There's an interest from outside, but right now we're just an in-house publication. Committing to fostering scholarly excellence among our students, the journal chooses to be highly selective in the pieces that it publishes. As a result, each year's volume includes only a small portion of the essays submitted. And over time, the journal has increased its selectivity. Our first volume had 7 or 8. Last year had 4. This year had 3. So we're very selective in what we choose to publish. Perhaps the greatest fear I had in establishing student journals was the fear of unending amounts of work foisted on the hands of the faculty advisor, me. To prevent this, we established several layers of editorial control, and I think we're going to have some repetition between what Dr. Maple said and what I'm going to say, but essentially what I'd like to talk about now is how we organize the journal to absorb, or potentially absorb, a bunch of the work of editing and publishing the journal. The easiest way, I think, of describing the editorial structure of the journal, in other words, who does what, is, like Dr. Maple did, to describe a typical publishing year for a beginning journal, for a small journal. Each fall, like Dr. Maple as faculty advisor, I appoint 2. Dr. Maple had 1, I have 2 co-editors. One of our co-editors for this version, and actually I'm going to keep 1, but these, I'll ask our Christina Wagner, our co-editor, to distribute these, and you are welcome to take these if you like. You can have these, and hopefully there'll be enough, if not, we could share. In choosing co-editors, I, like Dr. Maple, look for very talented students who are excellent writers. I also look, because we have 2, I also look for one of those that will be a better grammarian than I am. And I look for someone who's very adept at mechanics, and this year that happened to be Christine Wagner, who is also a double major in English. So that also helps very, very much. So these co-editors work with me to establish the deadlines for paper submissions. They maintain the journal's website. They arrange for advertising. They make all final decisions regarding the journal. Now, shortly before the submission deadline, usually sometime in late January, I invite, working with the co-editors, a group of 8 thereabouts, talented graduate and undergraduate students to join a student editorial board. We have co-editors, but we also have a board. This board reads all the essay submissions, of course the other co-editors too. The board reads all the essay submissions and makes recommendations to the co-editors. At the same time, I organize a faculty editorial board that consists of, most recently, 5 professors from around the country. And I am always looking for new people to add to that faculty board, and why are all the advisors in the room suddenly looking at their notes? But I'm always looking. If you're interested and if you want to see the inner workings of a small journal, come talk to me. We do it all by email, but I'm always looking for folks to join that faculty board. The faculty board reads and comments on submissions, and the journal prides itself, as all journals do, on a double-blind peer review process. Until publication, no one except the co-editors and myself are aware of the identities of the authors, and the authors are unaware of the composition of the editorial. Once the faculty and student editorial boards have submitted their recommendations, the co-editors collate the findings and make final decisions with me regarding the submitted essays. Authors whose essays have been selected for publication are typically given a month or thereabouts to make the necessary revisions for publication. While the authors are revising their essays, the co-editors write the journal's introductory matter and prepare the volume for publication. Once the revisions are submitted and approved by the co-editors, the journal is prepared for publication, printed, and bound. My involvement in the process is ever-present but limited. My role is to select talented and enthusiastic co-editors to oversee the everyday affairs of the journal. Now, heretofore, very little has been said about cost. As noted, one of my perennial fears at the beginning of this was the belief that publications can cost a very large amount of money, and they can. When we established it, we were very careful to balance the desire to create a professional publication experience for students with the realities of a very limited budget. And what I would say is we have great hopes, and then now I have some ideas on how I can do it. We have great hopes of moving from this stage to the next stage. I don't think we'll ever get to the stratosphere. Where
I have more suggestions on raising money, so all you may quickly.
But we have hopes of going to the next step. This is the beginning step, and going to the next step. But we figured out a way now to fund the journal as it is in its current form. And from the very beginning, our journal has, of course, represented a partnership between our chapter and our department. It's a non-financial partnership, I should note, and it allows the co-editors to print everything relating to it, including the journal itself, on a departmental copier. So we print them in-house. The department pays for all paper and ink related to the journal. The department provides office staff who provide assistance in printing and collating and all that stuff in relation to the journal. And in turn, the chapter pays for the covers, and we pay for all the costs of binding. So this binding, which we used to have, the binding we were talking about, which I actually preferred, but well, not the perfect, no, but it was the strip. We used to have the strip, and then we did that for a couple of years, and then last 2 years we've gone to this because for a number of reasons, not really related to cost so much as availability and printer services in our university. Last year, the entire print run of the journal, which is almost identical to Dr. Maple's print run, and to show you the difference between this type of in-house, the cost of this type of publication and the cost of that type of publication, the entire cost of our journal with about the same print run was $65. So easily absorbable by a medium size. So $65. That's why I can give them to you. Actually, I should have a collection, but no. Printing the journal in-house may not create, it doesn't create a, that's why we like to move up at some time, or it doesn't create the glossiest publication, but it does create, I think, a fun, professional product that reflects student involvement at every stage of its production. Each year, the co-editors working on the recommendation of the student and faculty editorial boards selects one essay to receive an annual paper prize. And this is something that I would suggest to you. Judged to be the best paper in that year, the winning essay and its author are recognized at our spring induction and also at an annual departmental reception. And I would note that our winner of the paper prize for this past year is Christine Wagner in the front. And it's all a blind process. And what I would also note is recently, a generous bequest to our journal has made possible the presentation of a very nice award to the winning author. We're able to solicit some funds for that. It's structured as a small endowment at the request of the benefactor, and it will make it possible for the journal to generously award the paper prize through 2021. And there's every hope that we can build that endowment to continue that. It's a very popular paper contest, and it has further fueled our students' interest in submitting their articles for publication. So 4 years ago, I had no clue that a student journal would be so easy to start or be so popular on my campus. Indeed, the journal has enhanced, even defined in some ways, the programs and activities of our chapter. It's become one of the major things we as a chapter come together to do. All my fears about establishing a student journal have, to date, proven unfounded. My experience suggests that student journals can be inexpensive, highly successful, and professionally rewarding to both advisors and students. And just briefly to recap, my advice to anyone interested in establishing a journal on their campus is sixfold. Number one, begin your journal in a convention year. If you bring students to the National Convention, they'll already have papers that can be considered for publication. Number two, establish a strong identity for your journal. Our journal benefits from a strong collaboration between undergraduate and graduate students. However, IBID prides itself on publishing undergraduate research. If we had to choose, and luckily we don't have to, but if we had to, we'd be an undergraduate journal. Our purpose is to encourage undergraduates to take pride in their academic work. This sense of identity and purpose structures what we do. It makes it easier for us to understand what we do and define ourselves. The third bit of advice, establish strong layers of editorial support. To equitably distribute the labor, I recommend appointing co-editors to oversee the journal's everyday affairs and boards of faculty members and students to provide a level of peer review. Fourth, remain in control of the journal. I recommend that the faculty advisor retain the ability to support and advise the co-editors and editorial boards should the need arise. So remain in control. Fifth, advertise. IBID regularly circulates its call for papers on its website, which I think is in the last page of this book. It should be here. If not, it's not. But my email at jblosser@tw.edu will get you all that information about the website. We have this website, which I actually gave you the website web address earlier too. We do announcements in classes, we do posters, we just spread the word in any way that we possibly can. And the result has been an escalating rate of student response from a wide variety of disciplines, not just history, but outside the discipline as well. As long as the papers are history related, of course, that's our next step. Sixth bit of advice is go for it. It's surprisingly easier than I had imagined it would be, and I encourage all advisors and students to create student-centered journals on their campus. That's all I need.
Well, Elizabethan is the gorilla. It didn't start this way, it started that way. What we did, or what we did, the advisor did, was say, this is going to be professionalized and we are going to have a journal because it's a factor in winning the best chapter. And that's what we're doing. Now, create an editorial board. In other words, recruit faculty members, and that's what we did, fundamentally. We also give prizes. If you'll take a look at the award-winning prizes, we already have them announced in the journal, and they all have cash prizes. So you have to raise money on the code. Well, guess where you get that? My checkbook. Okay. And then you encourage others to donate. Get the faculty involved, and then have student editors. And if you look in here, you will find, here's the review board, it takes up a full page. These are people who have been editors of the Elizabethan. In appreciation, here's a list of the copy editors. Half a page full of names. We created a course in historical editing. The department already has a tremendous tradition of writing. We have a course in theory where you write, if you're taking with me, 5 papers. Then you have a second semester on historical writing. Okay? That's another 6 papers. Then you have a course called historical editing, where you edit the winners into the system of Elizabethan. Now, double blind, absolutely critical. Again, the editor will funnel all the papers to one faculty member and one student. And we have the advantage of having graduate students, which is a tremendous advantage in terms of the Elizabethan because you have a carryover of personnel that have experience editing. I recommend to students that have difficulty writing well that they take the editing class. When they take the editing class, they suddenly discover that they too can write. And one of my students, in fact, that saved me. And he's now a doctoral candidate at ASU. One student applied through the process, and we have two sheets. We have a rating sheet, and then we have a comment sheet. So if your paper is not accepted, and 2/3 of the submissions are not accepted, you will get feedback from the two people that read it to help you revise and resubmit, because we have submissions in the fall and submissions in the spring. And as one of the chapter presidents said, when he was finishing his master's degree, for 3 years I tried to get into Elizabethan, and I finally made it. He's now at Notre Dame, got his PhD in Maryland. Another thing, the editors oftentimes get into PhD programs because they have public history programs, or in fact, one of them, I had an editor of a professional journal say, do you have anyone that can edit? Well, yes, I have the editor of Elizabethan. What's her field? I said, agricultural history. And then he fainted, and she got a full ride, okay? Because she had the experience editing. So getting into programs, getting money in programs, you tell the success stories. Okay? It's very labor intensive. Don't ever think it's not going to be. But when you get 20, 30 students, and we teach historical editing every semester, things get better and better. Now, when we started out like that, I kept saying, you know, the message to my students was we need to professionalize. Okay, that's when we go with the editorial board. We need to improve quality. That takes money, and everyone says, yeah, that's true. So the faculty advisor and the person supervising goes around, takes a look, and says, where can I find money, just like John did, in this university? And lo and behold, who has the most money? The Associated Students is a multi-million-dollar business at Cal State Fullerton. We have 36,054 students paying student fees. Student fees goes into a big pool of money. And you look through it and you say, well, what are they giving money out for? Well, they're giving money out to support courses in student writing. This is for the comm school. Well, wait a minute. I've got a journal here. So I make a presentation and I get $1,000. Very helpful. Because otherwise they had bake sales, book sales, and the like. And so we started the Elizabethan, we started getting the editorial process, and then we submitted it in the competition. And by the way, you don't always win. Okay? And that was not our experience. We were, you know, summarily rejected one time, but we could get even better. We got an honorable mention one time, and then we won. So we won, and I'm going back to the Associated Students, and I've got, not this journal, but the journal I have there, and I said, this journal won national prize. You got to go to Monkey. And we beat Berkeley. The 7 students on the committee stood up, give them more money, and we doubled our budget. And the dean of the, and of course what I was doing, a person sitting on that committee is the dean of the School of the Arts. One of the covers was done by his leading art professor. He did a drawing of a caricature of Jefferson. So I was involving the art department. We accept, and we have published from other colleges. We accept papers from other institutions. However, as I said, the rejection rate's about 2/3. So we have published an article years ago by a civil engineer. She was the vice president of our chapter. We have published from art history. We have published from political science. But one thing for all of these people, you know, you might think you're really good in political science. Well, come on, history. You show you academic standards. Okay. So that, now that has gone from, this year we have over $7,000 coming from the Associated Students and the dean of the college. The dean finally started signing on saying, you know, maybe I should help you fund this. What that result was, and I kept pushing on this as an issue, was we need to have people learn things about images. We need to learn to reproduce in color. Okay? Okay. And all of the people that were involved, now their pictures aren't as good, but in the back we have, well, there's someone standing in front of the wall. Somebody took that picture courtesy of Tom Fuji, one of my students. Oh, and then Tom Ryan. Oh, we attract some interesting students. Here's Tom Ryan. His background, computer hardware, and a law degree. And he finally solved it. And is now working on his history master's degree. And he's on Social Security. Mm-hmm. But at least he saw the light. So, and again, sometimes our editors end up, we have things like this, we have to clear copyright on some things. They'll learn to do that. But frankly, we publish a huge variety, and there's, get the pictures of the authors in the back, and the people who are there, the editors in the back, and things like that. Didn't do that to start with. The only image was a beak across a piece of paper, and then we hand stapled them. So we've come a long way, and I would encourage you to research your associated students, because lo and behold, once you see that your associated students just built a $7 million rec center for the students. At one point, our associated students funded our football team, but we've been undefeated since 1992 when we abolished it. The football team, not the students. So, and again, keeping direction. We have to get 3 bids since we're using associated students' money, so we have to go out. There's another thing for the students to learn, the process of getting a bid on printing. And interestingly enough, not interestingly enough, we also have one of our editors, this is how long he's been in business, has now passed away. Pancreatic cancer. He's a musician. Okay. He's a keyboardist. But he loved history. And he could really write. And his wife is a professional editor. And these people, once you get this tradition started, it draws people in. And they want to be on the editorial board. They want to be in the editing class. And then they stay with it for years. Because you can also point out student success. And every time I go back to ask for money, and I'll do it again in April, I'll point out all the people that have used this process to be successful in whatever they're doing. We have to know. So, I open to questions. Yeah.
I just want to make sure you good folks know that, as Gordon said, this started out at the bottom. If you look at it closely, this is better than the periodicals coming out of many of the major historical associations. And if you listen to him, you learn some good things. I didn't hear the first 2, but I suggest that if you have more questions, you can't finish it today. Here are 3 of our top people. But I just want to say something Gordon said. I'm going to talk about fundraising tomorrow. You always use your successes. That's what brings the money. And he's very astute at that. And not only that, but we also publish the awards, the cash awards we give out to students. Our chapter will give out around, say the vet award is $2,500, best undergraduate. The draft price is $1,000. And that didn't happen yesterday. That was built up for the last 20 years. Going to people and saying, wouldn't you like to honor your professor with a named prize? And, you know, I hadn't thought of that. Get the checkbook out, you can sign right here. And if you build it up. And the enthusiasm. We also have an award that was given by a veteran who was killed in Iraq. And the two people mentioned here are both Marines.
both severely wounded, both history students, both Phi Alpha Theta students, both outstanding writers. I love having them. Any questions?
Yes, questions? 3 schools, 3 levels, 3 sizes, 3 levels of resources.
I would only add that, by the way, we do work with there is an editor, sometimes 2 editors assigned to every article in here. And you learn, we try to get the students, the authors, to learn to work with editors. Because that's what you have to do in the real world. You have to learn to work with copy editors. And the only time we have problems is with a student who thinks that the writing is so brilliant that he's not going to change a single word. So the student editor hands it to me. And I have special stamps that I use in my writing classes. One's the toilet stamp. One's the crap stamp. I get out the red pen, and then I edit the first 2 paragraphs and say, hand this back to the most brilliant writer. And then suddenly, they work very well with our students. That's the only problem that I've experienced, and that's happened a couple times.
Question, yes?
Well, I'm hearing double blind, but in my school, it'd be really easy to figure out who wrote which paper. So you may all be pretending it's double blind, but you really know who's doing what. Is that the case with you? Or any of you?
Well, I have to say, we really don't have a double blind system. We are small enough, we're getting very few papers that really have a chance, that are submitted and have a chance. We don't have a double blind system. We professors know who the students are. We know what the quality is, and the student editor. Or last year, I had this particular volume had 2 editors. They know who the papers are, but you know. It's a level that we would, if we were larger and if we had more submissions, that I would certainly subscribe to. I think it's good to have that level of review. We simply aren't big enough, in my estimation, to do so. Gentlemen?
I just would say, with us, it's a very good point. I would say that we use the term double blind, and there are many papers that I get that I do not. They weren't written for my class or classes, and I don't know the author. There are some that I do, and I can't speak for the student board, but I would imagine that that's true in some cases. But I would, I do think that there is a level, however, perhaps imperfect, but there is a level of fidelity that is there. But it's not. We're not, as again, not big enough to make it.
I actually found a rather interesting solution to that, being in a small school myself, that I found a hidden resource for double-blind reading, and that is that most of the faculty now in a decent university library have master's degrees or above and are thrilled to be asked to help review for papers prizes. They're delighted to be involved because no one ever asks them to do this sort of thing. So it is a wonderful resource if you're in a small school.
Good suggestion.
Yeah, excellent suggestion.
Good suggestion.
And some of them will actually have history backgrounds and things of that nature, which makes it even better.
And they won't know the students' fields. So
It's an excellent point. Of course, we also rely on these outside
Yeah, you have
devices that don't know the students and only know me, really, essentially. So.
We use the outside readers when we do regionals, double blind and 10 readers at multiple universities have no idea who these people are. And the most interesting one, I had a professor from Oxford, a professor from NYU reading papers one year, and the fellow from Oxford was correcting the grammar. He said, no, just rate them. Oh, these people can't write.
Just a couple comments tonight. We also do the same thing. This is our 2nd year, so, but we also use the library staff.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of them are MAs in history also, so that, but they don't know the students, so for one. What we did this year, and maybe it's more for Tom and Jacob, not that I wouldn't move to Gordon on this, but since I have the list of all the history alum, I'm from Park, so I'm about the same size as Tom, about 1750. What I used was for alumni giving. If you give us $100 this year, we'll send you a free copy of our journal. I more than doubled our donation to our Phi Alpha Theta account this year by the alumni. Because if you do $50, you get a newsletter twice a year, but then we kids said, jump it up to 100, we'll send you a free copy of the journal, which just come out, which we also will eventually tap into, paper prizes. Right. But I needed to get something out there so they understood the scholarship before I went out to the big donors and said, now, what about? And I do have, Tom, a self-publishing venue for you that we're using, in particularly a couple of historical societies in Kansas City that are about $2 to $4 a copy. Very, very well done. Yeah. So I'll give it to you at the end.
Send that to me.
I'll give it to you at the end too.
Okay. Another here.
We just started our history here in Grand Valley State University. We started in August, so we're still in the process of hammering out our bylaws and how we choose editors and who gets to do what and all that. We faced two really big problems. One of them, of course, being soliciting submissions. We've managed to put out posters and send out emails and all that, but still we've managed one submission so far that we haven't bullied people into doing. So any advice you could give me on how we actually go about getting people interested in submitting to the journal would be very helpful. And my second question is, our journal is student edited, and all of them are undergraduates with the faculty advisor, of course, but they don't really have a great deal of experience in editing other students' papers on a professional level for a student journal. So they either tend to be overzealous or they tend to completely freeze. And so we are having a great deal of difficulty getting them to strike that balance where we don't compromise on quality while at the same time we don't completely tear the author's work apart unfairly. So any advice you could give me on that also would be very helpful.
Can I take? First of all, congratulations. I'm thrilled that you're starting. What I would say is there are a couple of questions here. But in response to the question about editing, how to do that, I would recommend the establishment of a faculty editorial board that could be in conversation with these. So essentially, you have the findings of the students, and you collate those, and then you collate the faculty responses, and then compare them. And that's just perhaps what I would think would be the easiest way to do it. And you'll find a medium ground there where you're not tearing the paper apart, but you're also adding constructive criticism. In respect to the other question about soliciting student responses, how many did you bring to the convention?
I'm sorry?
How many students do you have here with papers here?
Two of us.
There's two people. There's two folks that clearly have papers and have the desire to and they're getting comments here about their papers that they can go in and revise those. And then what we do is and Gordon does this so much better, but we make that connection between publishing in our journal or submitting to our journal and what the future holds. And if we can do it in this tiny little thing, and get people interested in publishing here with the thought that this brand name, whatever it is still a publication, and it's transportable. It's on a Vita. It's something that they can take to the next level, wherever that might be. That has gotten students interested in it. So I might, and at the same time, when you're talking about the benefits of publishing in the journal, you are convincing yourself and others that this is a project of worth and value.
And you're doing, John's doing, is you're also advertising to the whole of the institution that you're doing something significant. And one other thing that we've done that has been extremely successful is have a spring session of students coming back and talking about, well, how did you get that job at the GAO? You're now at the GAO. How did you get that? What was the key? Well, writing. Okay. How did you become the supervisor of the accounting department for the Irvine Corporation? Well, it was writing. Well, where did you learn that? We just start throwing out questions because they're making a presentation. Well, this is what I do now. I supervise all the accountants at the Irvine Corporation. what really enabled you to get that job? I said, history undergraduate. It's writing. And boy, what a connection. Then you have the students sitting there going, oh, maybe I should try the process too. Yeah. So I think it's a very good PR. It's very critical PR.
Yeah. And as you, if you're in a small university and you're trying to get something new off the ground, quite simply the faculty saying to students, that was a good paper. Would you consider submitting it to the journal, and then talk about these sorts of things? You know, yes, it'll be more work, but it will have these advantages. And so faculty, particularly in these early stages for a new journal, of saying your work is good, you have quality work, please consider submission. And so I mean, we're a small department of only 3. We teach all the history classes. We know what's out there, and so we kind of buttonhole people and give them the push that they think, well, it's not good enough, or oh, I don't want to do the work or extra work or whatever. We give them gentle nudges that help overcome those. I believe that, no, I'm wrong. We go to 11:30. I was thinking 11:15 and thinking we were starting to run over time. So we can take more questions if there are some. Yes.
Yeah, I'm from a very large university, University of Illinois in Champaign. What is the role of graduate students exactly? Could you explain that a little more clearly? Because I think we'd have to rely on them a lot.
The graduate students, we will draw them in primarily through getting published. That's why Don Steluto at Notre Dame said, finally, after 3 submissions, 3 revisions, I finally got it published. But the primary thing is that they are looking for a means of improving their writing skills. And frankly, at large universities, that's sometimes lost. And I fondly remember a student from the largest university in California, to the west of us, we're the 2nd largest university in California, that came over and he frequently forgot verbs. And I called him in my office and he said, no one's ever called me on that. I said, what's wrong with this alleged sentence? And he couldn't tell me. Because no one had worked with it. But now, when you start saying that to graduate students, like the fellow that's at ASU, you can improve your writing if you go through this process. Be on the Low-Ethan board. Work with people. Take the editing class, and it's offered every semester. And we get graduate students taking that because they want to improve their writing. Because many graduate students would actually like to go on for PhDs. And folks, if you go into law school, talk to most lawyers, people coming out of law school have a very difficult time writing. Okay, so people that really want to go to law school should learn how to write before they get there.
Amen. Just had a young lady. Well, she's in her 2nd year now, but one of the first things that happened to her in law school, first fall semester, 1st year law, was she was crucified by a professor for her writing, and it was overuse of passive verbs. And we had been hammering that, and she wasn't taking us seriously until she got to law school, and suddenly she was back saying, now, one more time, go over this with me. Writing is crucial in law school or graduate school, whatever direction you're heading, and there's nothing better than going through the kinds of processes that we've been talking about here today to really heighten your skills and sensitivity. And so whether you're faculty thinking about starting a journal or students thinking about being involved in publishing in a journal, it's an excellent process. It's a very good thing to.
And by the way, if you missed it, September 21st in the Wall Street Journal, there was an editorial, an op-ed piece by the CEO and president of Lockheed Martin, and it's entitled "The Education for Our Economy." and he argues that this country needs history education. That's an engineer. His point was, we need people who can digest a mass of material, synthesize it, and then set it up and explain it in a way that it's understandable. And he said, of the 80,000 engineers I've worked with, the people that could do that were the most successful. But folks, it's not just the engineers. And I think that's one thing at Illinois, you might simply say, this is, the fact is, if you want to take the Wellbeathan back to Illinois, take those copies. You can take the copy.
This?
Yeah.
Okay.
And say, okay, UCLA one time put on their Phi Alpha Theta website that they came in second. They didn't say who they came in second to. We know.
Yeah.
And
Can I have the other one?
absolutely. I mean, remember, as a lawyer, I can tell you that possession is critical to. If you want some copies, email me. Okay? Because I could only bring 2 of them. I wish I could have filled the whole suitcase, but.
And I asked for my copies back because I'm really running low on numbers, and I promised the VPAA and the dean and the director of admissions that I'll be handing these out to prospective students. So I need my copies. I'm sorry, to go back to.
Unless you plan to attend Oklahoma Christian.
Unless University, I'll give you a copy.
And make sure when you have this, distribute them to the dean, the vice president, the president. Yes. And of course, that's one reason when I go to the associate students, I've got 2 deans sitting there, and the art dean thinks we're the best ones at Schweitzer.
Was there a question?
Well, I just wanted to know the date on the Wall Street Journal thing again.
September 21st.
September 21st.
Section A. At the top of my syllabus in American history next semester is a copy of that editorial. That's why you're here, and that's why you have to write 3 papers, and in a 100-level survey, you have 8 books. Boy, that sure turns the class out.
Do we have any other questions before that we can help you with before we adjourn? Thank you for your presence, and we'll certainly be happy to talk with you privately if you'd like.